I found 6 Pokémon at the edge of a cliff in the freezing fog. I had no idea what I was bringing home. One never moved from the hallway. One set the kitchen on fire every other Tuesday. One destroyed my Wi-Fi permanently. We were chaotic. We were loud. We were perfectly happy. Until a monster walked through our wall. And after that, something far worse came from the sky. We weren't ready, but we had each other. I was hiking near the jagged peaks of the Black Ridge Cliffs. The fog was impossibly thick. The air was freezing. And right there, hidden under wet dead leaves near a dangerous drop, were 6 Pokeballs. Ancient, weathered, completely abandoned. I didn't know what was inside, but I couldn't leave them there in the freezing rain, so I brought them home. That night, I placed them on the living room rug. I didn't press any buttons, but one by one, the rusty mechanisms clicked. 6 blinding flashes of white light filled the room. When the light faded, sitting right there in the middle of my house were 6 tiny, fragile creatures. Pikachu, Eevee, Charmander, Bulbasaur, Psyduck, and Snorlax. They looked at me. I looked at them. And that was the exact moment my quiet, peaceful life completely ended. Snorlax took 3 slow steps and collapsed in the dead center of the hallway. He fell asleep instantly, a coma-like hibernation he never broke for months. He literally became breathing furniture. The others used his massive stomach as a trampoline while he snored, completely oblivious. Psyduck had absolutely no idea where he was, ever. You'd find him standing in a corner, holding his head, staring at a blank wall for hours. He was a walking disaster, constantly wandering into things, getting hit in the face, blinking slowly. His brain was just permanently buffering. Pikachu had a dangerous addiction to electricity. He chewed through 3 television cables, my laptop charger, and the microwave cord in a single week. If you tried to pet him without warning, the shock would rattle your teeth. Charmander meant well, but he had terrible allergies. When a fire type sneezes, bad things happen. He sneezed on the rug and set it on fire. He sneezed near the curtains and triggered the alarms. We followed him everywhere with a spray bottle. Eevee was the criminal mastermind. She destroyed furniture, stole food, and caused chaos with surgical precision. But the moment you caught her, she'd drop her ears, widen those massive brown eyes, and let out a soft whimper. Pure psychological manipulation. It worked every single time. And Bulbasaur, without him, the house would have burned to the ground. He used his vines for everything. Sweeping glass, catching falling plates, dragging Pikachu away from outlets by his tail. I'd often find him on the couch, rubbing his forehead, looking like a parent dealing with 5 insane children. The house was a war zone. The walls were scorched. It was never quiet. But at night, everything changed. When exhaustion finally caught up to them, the chaos stopped. I'd walk in and find all of them gathered around Snorlax, Bulbasaur using a vine as a blanket, Charmander keeping the room warm with his tail, Eevee curled up next to Pikachu, and even Psyduck fast asleep, leaning against Snorlax's arm. Looking at them in the quiet dark, I realized something. They weren't just pets. They were my family, and we were perfectly happy in our little messy world. But the universe doesn't care about happiness, and we had no idea that our childhood was about to violently come to an end. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. No warning sirens, just a sudden, deafening explosion that shattered every window in the house. The entire front wall caved inward, bricks, wood, blinding dust flying through the air. A wild Tyranitar stepped into the ruins of our living room, an armor-plated monster of solid rock and pure rage. It roared so deep the floorboards shook. Snorlax didn't flinch. Psyduck grabbed his head and ran screaming into the kitchen. He was out of the fight before it started. But the other 4 didn't run. They were tiny, they were terrified, but this was their home. Bulbasaur charged first, throwing his vines around Tyranitar's legs. The beast laughed and snapped them like cheap string, launching Bulbasaur through the kitchen island. Pikachu and Eevee leaped together, caught midair and slammed into the floor. Charmander stood his ground and breathed fire. Tyranitar raised its foot and crushed him into the ground. They were beaten, broken, and then 2 blinding lights erupted from the rubble. Bulbasaur's bulb bloomed violently. Thick, powerful vines ripped through the floorboards. He was Ivysaur now. From the debris, a pillar of searing red fire scorched the ceiling. Charmander stepped out taller, claws sharp, eyes burning. Charmeleon. Together, they pushed the Titan backward. Charmeleon's flamethrower melting the walls. Ivysaur's whip-like vines hitting like steel cables. Pikachu's lightning and Eevee's speed combining into something relentless. Step by step, until Tyranitar retreated into the dark. We stood in the ruins, Snorlax still sleeping in the crater. I thought the worst was over. Then I looked up through the hole in our ceiling. The sky turned black. Green lightning tore across the clouds in total silence. The air felt suffocating. The clouds tore open, and from the stratosphere, it descended. Rayquaza, the god of the sky. Ancient emerald scales, glowing golden eyes. It didn't roar, it didn't need to. Its presence alone demanded submission. A single flick of its tail unleashed a hyper twister that ripped our remaining walls from the ground. Charmeleon, Ivysaur, Pikachu, and Eevee were swept up and slammed into the dirt, helpless against a literal god. Rayquaza opened its jaws, a sphere of cosmic energy gathering in its mouth. Then a scream from the kitchen ruins. Psyduck. The terror had pushed his chronic headache past its breaking point. He squeezed his eyes shut, clutching his head, and exploded. A nuclear shockwave of psychic energy consumed him entirely. The clumsy duck was gone. Golduck stood in his place, eyes glowing piercing blue. Golduck thrust his hands forward, just as Rayquaza fired its cosmic beam. A massive psychic shield materialized over our ruined home. Seeing Golduck hold back a god lit something in Charmeleon. He refused to die on the ground. His tail flame turned from red to blinding white. Wings burst from the fire. A true dragon's roar shook the sky. Charizard. He launched himself like a missile and tackled Rayquaza mid-air. The battle was beyond comprehension. Fire, psychic energy, and lightning colliding above our ruined home. And through all of it, directly below the battle, Snorlax slept on. At one point, Charizard hurled Rayquaza straight down. The legendary dragon crashed with meteor force directly onto Snorlax's belly and bounced, launched back into the air, completely disoriented. Snorlax lazily scratched his nose and kept snoring. Wide open and disoriented, Rayquaza had no answer for what came next. Charizard's Fire Blast parted the black clouds. Golduck's Hydro Pump hit simultaneously. Pikachu, riding on Eevee's back, unleashed a bolt of lightning. The combined explosion lit up the entire horizon. Rayquaza let out one final frustrated screech and vanished into the fading clouds. The storm cleared. Golden light touched the scorched earth. Our house was entirely gone, just concrete and ash. My phone showed 47 missed calls from work. I looked at the phone, I looked at the destruction, and I smiled. Because sitting in the center of the crater was Snorlax, still sleeping, and resting against his massive arms were an exhausted Charizard, a proud Ivysaur, a calm Golduck, a bruised Eevee, and a sparking Pikachu. They weren't just pets anymore. They were warriors, survivors. They were my true friends.